Apple just announced the brand new Apple Watch Ultra, and this thing has been rumored for months, if not a year now, and it's finally here. And today, I just want to share my thoughts on this new wearable from the perspective of somebody who runs ultra marathons and is just a general overall endurance sport enthusiast. And by no means am I an elite athlete, but I do want to share my thoughts on this new wearable from Apple because I do have experience with a lot of these devices and what I expect from them in the ultra marathon environment. By the way, this is not an Apple Watch Ultra, this is the Series 7, but I wanted something to hold for this video, so yeah, that's what that is. The Apple Watch has always been an incredibly popular device among fitness enthusiasts and even non-active users who just want to be able to read their text messages and make phone calls from their wrist. As an ultra runner though, the Apple Watch has always been something I've wanted to love because I do love Apple products, their design and ecosystem, but I could never get around certain barriers that make it hard to live with for endurance sports like ultra marathon running. And honestly, I was a little bit shocked to watch the announcement video for the Apple Watch Ultra for a couple of reasons. First of all, because Apple is now competing directly with brands like Garmin, Suunto, COROS, Polar, all of those sport watch brands are now in competition with Apple. And they kind of were before, but not at this level because the Apple Watch Ultra is really going for that sports watch territory. And two, because I never thought I'd see ultra running legend Scott Jurek in an Apple advertisement. It's just a little bit weird, and I think Apple just single-handedly validated ultra running as a real sport, now that they've designed a watch for it. Like I said, I don't actually have an Apple Watch Ultra yet, but I do plan on getting one very soon, so stay tuned for an in-depth, really thorough review that'll be coming down the road when I actually have the watch. So instead of an in-depth review in this video, it's more of a reaction video. I'm just gonna go through some of the specs that are on Apple's website. We're gonna talk through them. I'm gonna try to highlight which ones I think are important, which ones to question because there's a couple. Okay, so the first thing I wanna talk about on the Apple Watch Ultra is going to be the design. It's got a real rugged kind of utilitarian look to it, and it's probably not gonna be for everybody. I think a lot of people are gonna love it, a lot of people are gonna hate it, and then you'll have people like me who fall somewhere in the middle. The one thing that bugs me about the design a little bit is the big bump out on the side of the watch. This is an Apple Watch Series 7. You can see it's nice and smooth all around, where the Apple Watch Ultra has kind of a big thing on the side of it that houses the digital crown and the action button. I think it's a very bold look, but I do think that once we start seeing this on people's wrists and it becomes more popular, it'll just kind of blend in and it won't be so out there. However, in terms of aesthetics, that's one thing, but there are some utility features on the Apple Watch Ultra that are a welcome change. What they did was they actually made the digital crown much bigger, so now you can actually use it with gloves on, and most importantly, they added a button that they call the action button, and you can actually configure that button to do various things, like start and stop an activity, or you can mark a waypoint, all kinds of different things you can do with that action button. Let me tell you, that is a welcome change in my opinion. Nothing infuriates me more than starting and stopping a run by tapping on the screen. I don't know why, I just don't like it, even if there's like haptic feedback. For whatever reason, it just doesn't feel reassuring to kind of tap on a watch to start your run. I like a nice clicky button for that action. I am curious about the user interface and the action button. I'm curious if you can actually use the Apple Watch Ultra 100% without touching the screen. It would be cool if you could do everything from the digital crown in the button, but something tells me you'll still need to use the screen, which does cause issues when you're wearing gloves or you're sweaty or it's raining or any of those situations come about. In terms of size and weight, the Apple Watch Ultra is pretty interesting because it's the biggest Apple Watch they've ever made, coming in at 49 millimeters, which is pretty large compared to other watches on the market. And for example, I've got some other watches to compare here. We've got the Garmin Venue SQ2 all the way on the left, the Apple Watch Series 7, the Garmin Epix Gen 2, that's a 47 millimeter watch. Then we've got the Garmin Fenix 7X and the Tactix 7, and these are 51 millimeter watches. And with the power of video editing, I'm gonna go ahead and drop an Apple Watch Ultra in here so we can kind of see how it compares to these other watches in terms of size. And of course, this is kind of an estimation, knowing that this watch is 51 millimeters and that watch is 47 millimeters, we can kind of assume what the Ultra will look like. Quick interruption, if you're enjoying this video and you're getting some value from it, I'd really appreciate it if you went down and hit that thumbs up button and subscribe button down below, because those two things really help me out. Also, if you're planning on picking up any of these Garmin's or the new Apple Watch when it comes out, check out the links in the description down below because they do help support this channel. Okay, back to the video. All right, jumping into the next topic, that's going to be build quality. The Apple Watch Ultra is a rugged design, and what they used is premium build materials to help that rugged design. The case of the Apple Watch Ultra is going to be made out of a titanium. We don't know what grade of titanium, but titanium is a pretty durable substance. And then the lens on the Apple Watch Ultra is a sapphire crystal. Not only that, but instead of the old design on this Apple Watch Series 7 where you've got like a curved lens, the Apple Watch Ultra has a flat lens, and it has a perimeter of metal around it to protect the glass. There is one thing to note about sapphire glass though, and it's that it actually reflects more light than something like Gorilla Glass. And that reflectance actually makes the screen harder to read in direct sunlight. So if I angle this Garmin at a certain angle, you can see that the sapphire basically turns white because it's reflecting all of that light. But if you use something like a Gorilla Glass, or I angle this Apple Watch that way, you can see it reflects less light. So we'll have to see how the Apple Watch Ultra works in direct sunlight, but the display on that watch is much brighter, which we'll talk about in a minute, so it may not be an issue at all. Moving right along, let's talk about that display that's under the sapphire glass on the Apple Watch Ultra. This is an incredibly bright display. At 2000 nits, it's one of the brightest displays on the market for a wearable, and I feel like it's going to be really incredible to use in basically any lighting situation. As an example, this Garmin Epix Gen 2 here actually has 1000 nits of brightness on its display, and as you can see, it's an absolutely beautiful display and plenty bright for any lighting condition, including direct sunlight. I've had zero issues with this watch. So you can only imagine a watch twice as bright as the Epix Gen 2. That's going to be really impressive. And not only is the Apple Watch Ultra going to be incredibly bright, but it has an incredibly high resolution display along with a new night view mode on the watch face that allows you to use it at night without blinding yourself, which is really nice. And now I want to talk about the new band options that were announced with the Apple Watch Ultra. There's the new Alpine Loop band that's designed for climbing and expeditions and things like that, and it's got sort of this hook and loop closure mechanism. There's also the Ocean band that's designed for divers, and that one is specifically designed to be worn over a wetsuit. And then there's the Trail Loop, which is designed for trail runners and endurance athletes, and the one I'm most excited about. The Trail Loop is a basic nylon band that wraps over itself and kind of velcros shut, and it reminds me a lot of Garmin's design with their Ultra Fit nylon band. This is the Garmin Enduro here, and you can see this has a very similar nylon band. This is extremely comfortable. It doesn't really absorb moisture or anything like that, so I'm pretty excited to try the Trail band out. Now let's talk about something that's arguably more important than the loop of the watch. Let's talk about GPS accuracy and modes. The Apple Watch Ultra was announced to have dual frequency GPS mode, which gives it incredible accuracy when you're in challenging situations like in a city with tall buildings or skyscrapers, or in a slot canyon while you're hiking, or even climbing up the side of a cliff face or something like that. Dual frequency or multi-band GPS mode is not something new. Apple did not invent this. In fact, it is available on a bunch of other watches, like all of these Garmin's I have on the table here, and even the COROS VERTIX 2. But I can say dual frequency GPS is really impressive on all of these watches that I've tested out. They've all performed quite well and get really good accuracy. So I can only assume the Apple Watch Ultra will follow in the footsteps of all these watches. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they're using the same GPS chipset inside the watch, although maybe they're making their own, I don't know. Again, I don't have the Apple Watch Ultra in-house to test out, but I am very interested to see how accurate that dual band GPS mode is. Reminder, subscribe so you don't miss the review down the road. And now that we talked about GPS modes and accuracy, I want to talk about heart rate accuracy for a second, because this is an interesting one for me. Apple didn't acknowledge the heart rate sensor on the new Apple Watch Ultra, really. They said it's there, but is it a new design? Did they change it at all? I'm really curious about that, or if they're just reusing the Series 8 sensor on the back of a bigger watch. Now, historically, larger watches like the Garmin Tactix 7 I have here, when they're heavier and larger and you wear them on a smaller wrist like mine, you find that they move around a lot, and movement is bad for heart rate sensing. So I'm curious if the new Apple Watch Ultra ends up with worse heart rate accuracy as compared to something like the Series 7 or the Series 8, or is it just as good? Because Apple heart rate sensors have been really good in the past. In fact, the Series 7 is one of the best I've ever tested on this channel and continues to be that way. So I'm assuming the Series 8 and hopefully the Ultra will be the same as the Series 7 in terms of accuracy. The Apple Watch Ultra also gets a new sensor on board, which is a temperature sensor to pick up your skin temperature while you're wearing the watch. And I feel like there's so much opportunity to use this sensor for runners or even for recovery, but right now they're just using it mainly for women's health, for like cycle tracking and things like that. We'll have to wait and see how they develop this down the road, but now that the sensor is there, they can utilize it and do a bunch of cool stuff with it. And what's really cool about the temperature sensor is that there's two of them. There's one that's on your skin to get your skin temperature, and then there's one on the surface of the watch to actually get the ambient temperature, so it can cancel that out and get you a really accurate reading. I can't wait to test that out. Now let's talk about the big one, and probably the whole reason this watch exists: battery life. The Apple Watch Ultra will get up to 36 hours of battery life out of the box, which is really impressive for an Apple Watch. I say that because it's not that impressive for a sports watch like a Garmin or a COROS or a Polar. Those watches typically can last a couple of weeks on a single charge. The Apple Watch Ultra gets you a day and a half. If you're a Garmin user, a day and a half is going to sound pretty terrible, but if you're an Apple Watch user, a day and a half sounds pretty good, because previously on the Apple Watch Series 7 and even the new Series 8, you only get 18 hours of battery life, so that means you charge your watch every single day. I have mixed feelings about this. I'm happy they increased the battery life on the Apple Watch Ultra, but I do wish they made it a little bit more ultra and gave us like 4 days, 5 days of battery life. That would feel a lot better than just a day and a half. However, there is this weird thing on their website where they say that the watch can get up to 60 hours of battery life in a new low power mode that's coming later in a firmware update. That low power mode is a little bit confusing right now because, first of all, it's not in the firmware yet, and second of all, on the website, they don't really spell out what it does and what features are being turned on and off to preserve that battery life. But in the fine print, I did find some usage expectations to get that 60 hours of battery life, and in the fine print it says you can get about 15 hours of working out or GPS activity, 600 time checks, that's just looking at the watch for the time, 35 minutes of app use, 3 minutes of talk, which is like taking a phone call, and up to 15 hours of sleep tracking. Now my question here is, what if I didn't do some of the other stuff like taking a 3-minute phone call or 35 minutes of app usage? How long would the battery last if I just hit start and went for a run? Because as an ultra runner, that's what's important to me. Unfortunately, Apple, unlike someone like Garmin, doesn't list detailed specs for the batteries, so we don't know exactly how much GPS on battery life we'll get, and that kind of stinks as an ultra runner. That's what I really want to know. Ultimately, I want to know if I would be able to run a 100-mile ultra marathon with the Apple Watch Ultra. It has Ultra in the name. I want to run an Ultra with it. The next big upgrade to the Apple Watch Ultra is going to be the navigation features. Previously, on the Apple Watch Series 7, out of the box, there were no navigation features, but because it is an Apple Watch, you do have access to the App Store, where you can download all kinds of different apps for offline mapping on the Series 7. However, the Apple Watch Ultra ships with a new compass widget that actually has a bunch of new features in it, including a full trackback mode. Trackback mode will record your activity when you're out hiking or running or riding or whatever, and if you need to get back to the beginning of your activity, it'll retrace your steps back to the beginning using a breadcrumb map. This is a really powerful tool, and I'm glad they included this out of the box. However, I do wish they had some sort of like Apple Maps built into the watch that you could use offline. You could download the map to the watch and go hiking or whatever and have Apple Maps on your wrist. That would be really cool, maybe in a firmware update down the road. But again, it's an Apple Watch, so you can just go on the App Store, download different apps for hiking or trail running, and get mapping on your watch with that instead of using what's built in. The Watch Ultra also has a couple of new safety features. For instance, there's an 86 decibel siren that you can turn on and trigger while you're in the wilderness for help, or even if you're just in trouble, you can hit that button and a loud siren will go off on the watch. I can't wait to test that out. But there's also crash detection. Previously on the Series 7, we had bike crash detection, things like that, but now the watch can actually pick up a car crash. If you're in a car that's in an accident, the watch will pick that up and signal for help, which is really cool. And finally, there's a whole bunch more non-running related features, like now the Apple Watch Ultra is going to be water resistant to 100 meters. Previously it was only 50. It's also EN 13319 certified, which is something for diving I don't even understand. And there's a new partnership with Hewish Outdoor, which turns the watch into a dive computer when you're in the water. I'm not a diver, but maybe I'll try to find a way to test that out. And finally, let's talk price. The Apple Watch Ultra comes in at $799, and that's the price for all of them. There's no difference, which is actually kind of a bargain when you're comparing it to the Epix Gen 2, which I never thought I'd say. And I laid all this information out there for you to make your own opinion, and that's why now I want to hear from you. Are you going to get an Apple Watch Ultra for $800? Or are you going to go for the Epix Gen 2 or something entirely different like the Apple Watch Series 8 that just came out? Drop down below into the comments and let me know what feature interests you and why you're making making the decision you think you're gonna make. And that's really it for this kind of weird reaction video. I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel down below so you don't miss my upcoming in-depth review of the Apple Watch Ultra, which will be coming when the watch is finally out there. If you are planning on picking up an Apple Watch Series 7 or Series 8 or Apple Watch Ultra or even a Garmin Epix Gen 2 or the COROS VERTIX 2 or any watch I showed off in this video, please consider checking out the links in the description down below because they do help support this channel and they cost nothing extra to you, so why not use them? And that's really it. We've reached the end. I can't believe we made it this far. Okay, I gotta go now. Bye.